G'day my YouTube peeps. Today I will be showing you guys my AncestryDNA results. Now this was a DNA test that I took back in 2017, and basically what I did was I just bought a DNA kit online from AncestryDNA. I spit into this test tube where there's a certain height they want you to spit up to. I spit up to that height, and then what I did was I shipped it to one of its headquarters in America. And what they do is they test my genetic, the genetic composition and the genetic, let's speak properly, the genetic material in my saliva. So they compare my saliva sample to other saliva samples around the world, and they see which saliva sample is mine most comparable to. So these were the results, the previous results. So Europe South, Italy went down from 23%, Turkey and the Caucasus around the same, the Middle East decreased quite a bit because it used to be 20%, now it's just 5%. But yeah, so Europe South is now 63%, Turkey and the Caucasus around the same, and the Middle East went down drastically. But yeah, so if you guys don't know, I actually come from a region of Italy called Calabria, and Calabria is just right there at the boot, of Italy. And both my parents come from there, and their families used to live in agro towns, farming, fishing villages near the coast. And it was near the Strait of Messina too, which separates Sicily from Calabria. So the fact that it tests my migration from Sicily is not surprising whatsoever. And also, it's no longer in my estimate that I have European Jewish or Africa North or Iberian Peninsula, but those were only trace regions, and those are basically just other groups in the Mediterranean. So the fact that I don't have those isn't too much of a shock. But the thing is though, let me just go back here, go back. So when I go to see all regions, view all regions, just wait for it to load. Here we go. So when I go to Europe, and then I click on Europe South, or rather Italy, excuse me, and I'll go to southern Italy. The interesting thing is that it says Calabria, no connection. No connection for Calabria, which is pretty strange actually, because both my parents come from there. But for Sicily, it's very likely connection. So what that means is that I most likely do not have the R1b haplogroup, but rather my ancestry comes from the original Neolithic European farmers from 10,000, 15,000 years ago that migrated from the Levant and Anatolia. So more than likely, I descend from the original Neolithic European farmers from the Eastern Mediterranean, rather than the Indo-Europeans from the Pontic-Caspian steppe that later brought into Western Europe R1b, and that's why R1b is the predominant haplogroup in Western Europe. So those original European Neolithic farmers originally settled around from the Levant and Anatolia throughout the Mediterranean islands, France, Iberia, Britain, Greece, North Africa, and then of course the Indo-Europeans came from the Pontic-Caspian steppe, as well as the Altaic Turks from the Pontic-Caspian steppes as well, and they assimilated the original Neolithic farmers. But yeah, pretty cool. Then we go to Asia, or rather West Asia might be better. Then we go to the Middle East. Now the interesting thing about the Middle East is that I most likely come from the Levant area of the Middle East. However, it says here, I do not have Syrian Lebanese in me, but that does not mean I don't come from the Levant, even though it's so a big portion of it there. What it means is that I don't have Syrian or Lebanese in there, so that means I'm not a Phoenician or a Carthaginian or an Assyrian or a Babylonian or a Sumerian. I'm none of that. I'm none of those things, but I could be other regions of the other ethnic groups of the Levant. Does not necessarily mean that I don't come from the Levant. It just means that I don't come from those regions of the Levant or those ethnic groups of the Levant. But I have a pretty big feeling that I come from the Levant, and particularly could have Hebrew in me, very likely. And we go to Turkey and the Caucasus, same thing. It says here, I have no Armenian in me, and while Armenians are a big ethnic group in the Caucasus, it does not mean I don't come from the Caucasus just because I don't have Armenian. It just means that I come from another ethnic group, probably the Georgians or the Circassian people. Speaking of which, these are the peoples of the Caucasus, comprising more than 50 ethnic groups. So, and many different various languages. So, one way to determine which ethnic groups or which genetic groups reside in a specific region is to see which languages are spoken there. And there's so many isolated languages spoken throughout the Caucasus, and they consist of the indigenous and of the migrant. A lot of these are migrant languages, but there are also quite a few indigenous ones as well. So I don't have Armenian, so of Indo-European, I don't have Armenian but I also don't have Greek, because then it would just show up as Greek as my ancestry. I probably don't have Iranian, because it would just show up as Iranian Plateau or Persia. But I could have Kurdish, but again, it may just show, if I had Kurdish, it may just show up as Iranian Plateau. I'm not sure. And the Altaic peoples, I probably have Azer-Turkic and Nogad Turkic and Kalmyk and Kalche Turkic and Balkay Turkic, but I probably don't have Turkmen or anything like that, because if I had Turkmen, it would probably just say Central Asia. And just looking at the rest here, and we'll just say Central Asia. And for Mongolian, I definitely don't have Mongolian, because then it would say Mongolian for me, or East Asia. But I most likely have Georgian, Dagestani languages, and the Chechens as well. The Republic of means the Republic was influenced by the Chechens, as well as I could have Abkhaz. I think it's very possible in the Caucasian languages, the Caucasian indigenous people. I think it's very likely that I have ancestry from them, from the Caucasus, as well as I could have Altaic Turkics that reside in Turkey, or that mainly reside in Turkey or Caucasus, which comes from my Sicilian heritage. And the Sicils were, it says here, Gallic heritage, East Sicily during the Iron Age. The only thing of the Sicils that they were an Indo-European, most likely Indo-European group, Indo-European, exactly what Indo-European language, and it's Hungarian or Italic or any one of those really. They resided mainly in the northeast and northwest and north-south or southwest of Sicily. And yeah, and the Sicils, they inhabited, mainly settled in the northwest, or rather northeast and southeast of Sicily. Yep. I let you guys just read all of this here, because it's actually quite interesting. Here, with the religion part, just tells about their what religion they believed in. Very influenced by Greek mythology, which is not surprising, because the Greeks especially had many settlements in the Sicily part of Sicily. I'm not quite sure how to say that word, but hopefully I'm not butchering it too much. So yeah, and there was also many Mycenaean influence in Bronze Age Italy throughout the Mediterranean, which were the pre-Indo-European Greeks. So the Sicels were either Illyrian, also known as Albanian, or Ligurian, also known as French, or Anatolian or Italic language or people group. But we don't know for sure. So yeah, I hope you this is very interesting. The Siconians were also another group. They were not Indo-European. More than likely they were not Indo-European, and they shared borders. This is the approximate locations of the Siconians, which they pretty much just inhabited the central, right smack in the middle of Sicily. They inhabited the central because they're probably pushed in by the Armenians and the Sicilians into the middle of the island. Excuse me. And this was before the arrival of the Carthaginians, Greeks, Romans, or Phoenicians. And so the Siconians are thought to be the oldest inhabitants of Sicily. The Greek historian Tycladides, probably butchered that name, claimed that they immigrated from the Iberian Peninsula driven by the Ligurians, so by the river Siconus. So there was probably a river called Siconus in Catalonia, which is a region of Spain. Let's try to get independence now, but it's a region of Spain that it's used to be. The Ligurians were there until they got pushed out by the Ligurians or by famine. So it was probably like one of the river systems in Catalonia. It's like Conus. And it just explains the language details here. Some classified, very few, which probably means they're definitely one of the oldest. They're probably descended from the Neolithic original European farmers, and probably the Armenians may have been as well. The Armenians, of course, as I explained before, inhabited the western part of Sicily during the Bronze Age and during Classic Antiquity. This map here basically detailing what we showed you before, what I showed you before. Yeah, it's very interesting. There was only one Indo-European group in Sicily, and that were the Sicels. The rest were pre-Indo-European, probably descended from the original Neolithic farmers from 10 to 11,000 years ago. So yeah, I'm just looking at the settlements here. It's very interesting. There it talks about the origins of them. They were indistinguishable from their Siconian neighbors in the early Iron Age. So they probably had the same, origins, as I was saying, original Neolithic farmers. So yeah, and they maintained friendly alliances with Carthage. They were Carthaginian fanboys before it was cool. That Almaean temple is very beautiful, by the way. Oh, and then they turned on Carthage and allied with Rome instead during the First Punic War. There's traitors! and another thing is that they claim to be descended from the Trojans. So probably the Roman myth or Roman legend of being descended from the Trojans wasn't originally part of Roman thought, but that they adopted it from the Almaeans. And the Almaeans probably weren't that far off, because they did migrate from Western Anatolia in the Aegean Islands, and it was probably near Troy or somewhere. There could have been Trojans, or at least used to live in Troy before the Trojans drew them out, and that's why they had to migrate elsewhere and eventually settling into Sicily. So yeah, this was part 2. Look out for part 1. Look out for part 2.